In this video, I'm going to show you how you can make your kids millionaires. And the best bit about it, when they withdraw it, they won't pay a penny in tax. Now stay tuned, as this one here is an absolute game changer. Imagine you could set your kids up for life. They reached 18 and they had enough for a house deposit or the chance to travel the world. Getting a leg up in life at exactly the right time when they're going out and trying to find their way in the big bad world. I know friends of mine that went off to uni, they bought a house with their parents as a guarantor, yes, but they rented the rest of the rooms out to their mates and ended up leaving uni with an asset that had grown in value, equity that had built up over the 3 years, and they still owned an investment property in a student city when they left. I know friends of mine that got access to their money at 18 and went on a 2-year trip around the world, learning invaluable lessons about life, different cultures, and of course themselves. Something which I feel like everyone should do when they reach 18 is do at least a year of traveling. But look, all of those friends had something in common. Their parents and their families took steps to give them a good start in life. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can do the same for your little ones too. Now we're going to start with investing beats savings over the long term. Now, over the years, there's been many different types of children's accounts, from trusts to post office accounts. You remember those little blue books they gave us? Standard children's savings accounts, children's pots, all sorts. Whilst they're all noble in their goal of providing a leg up to the little ones, they overlook one key element. The fact that when you save money, often in most periods of history, your savings decrease in value because historically average inflation is higher than the interest rates that those banks will provide. Prime example, a 3.5% interest a year versus 4% inflation. Sure, yes, look, we're building up a balance, but other than that, this isn't growing, it's actually diminishing in value, which is absolutely ridiculous if you think about it. Yes, there are periods in history where you might earn a bit more from interest and inflation, but never really by that much, and certainly not going to make the millionaires that we want to see in our lifetime. To beat inflation, we have to invest our money into assets. Now, in this case, the most simple way to invest is into the stock market, as that's the most readily accessible. People are always scared of investing, and I get it, because it's made to look like a big trading floor, stocks flying up and down, traders screaming at each other, and whilst that does exist, yes, there's often another side that gets overlooked, and that's the simple investing into index funds or ETFs, which just track a particular country, a sector, or a list of companies, which are essentially indexes, lists of companies. One I really like is the S&P 500 because it's super easy. Most people have heard of it. It's the 500 largest companies in the USA. And this would have actually kicked out a 12.34% annual average return rate if you're looking since 2010. That's really not bad at all, and certainly better than our 3.5% interest, which the bank gave us, as we remember, is actually minus because of inflation. So if I take that 12.34% and take off annual inflation and the fees that you'll likely pay for investing too, you're going to be left with around about 8%, depending on your provider. Now, yes, of course, there is an element of risk here when you invest, but investing for the long term, that risk is considerably lowered. Some years it's going to be a lot more than the 8%, and some years it's going to be a lot less. You'll have years where it's going to be negative returns, but others will be up 10, 20%. So when you scan out, around 8% a year is a good number. So how does the everyday person like this do this? Well, the answer lies in junior ISAs. All right, let's imagine you've got a magical box where you can keep your money. This isn't just any box though, it's a very special one called a junior ISA. Now imagine every time you put money into this box, over time it grows more than it would if you kept it under your bed or a regular piggy bank. That's because this magical box has a power called interest or investment growth. In the UK where we are, we've got two types of magical boxes or junior ISAs that you can have. Cash junior ISA is your number one, and this is very simply like a savings account. You put money in and the bank pays you interest. But as we discussed earlier, it may get impacted by inflation and devalued over time. Number two is a stocks and shares junior ISA. Now this one is a bit more like a treasure hunt. You put your money in, you buy tiny parts of companies, and these could go up in value, but they could also go down too, which is our risk that we spoke about earlier. But generally, when we scan out, the markets go one way, up, over time. Now, the money that you put inside a junior ISA environment is also not subject to tax from your interest, from your capital gains, from your profits, or your dividend payments. So no tax on the growth at all, which is awesome. Now, there's a few things I want to note about junior ISAs. Your child must be under 18 to open one. Living in the UK, they must legally depend on you for care. You can contribute up to £9,000 each tax year, and this is outside of your personal ISA allowance of £20,000. You cannot access the money once it's contributed. The money belongs to your child, and the child will take control of the account when they're 16, but they can't withdraw the money until they're 18. Now, I can hear you all saying what happens when they reach 18. And you'd be totally right in asking this question. Yes, they have full control over their money at this point. Yes, they could take it out and blow it all in Ibiza, and there's nothing that you can do about it. Yes, they could buy a really nice car off the forecourt and totally disregard everything that you've taught them. These are all possibilities. But in my humble opinion, and look, just to be clear, I'm no parent expert here. I'm just a fan of common sense logic. If you teach the kids the value of a pound, how planting seeds creates trees and all of that jazz, then they hopefully will respect you enough, which you would hope they would do if you've been bringing them up for 18 years by that point. And look, I've seen thousands of kids in this position make the right decisions because their parents help them make that right decision. And look, yes, there's going to be anomalies here where you get a devil child, and even if you parent them correctly and perfectly along those 18 years, and they're going to go out and do their own thing. But at least they can do their own thing. That's my opinion. I left home at 17 and I had no guidance, no money. If I'd have been parented correctly, I could have done with that money when I went off to university, as I left with a ton of debt. I got very little support. Now, before we say anything else, my parents aren't bad people, but they were rubbish with money. And guess what? It rubbed off on me. But if you're still worried about this, then not all is lost here. There are a couple of options for you. One being junior SIPs. Now, this option is just like your very own pension. You're starting them very young. You can invest the money just like you can inside a junior ISA, but the money is locked up for your child until they're 57. And this is likely to increase with life expectancy going up. It's going to go up. Whilst this is an option, I'm not a massive fan of it. I get why people might do it for that security, but you're telling me at 18 you could have had that money and then instead you can't have it till you're 57? No, thank you. Now, the second option here is just to section off some of your own money in your own accounts, and when they get to the proper age, go through the proper processes of gifting them the money. I prefer this if you really don't want to have anything in their name, but you know, each to their own with this. So what about making our kids millionaires? We started this video with a big claim, so we should probably go through that. Now, even with max contributions of £9,000 a year into our junior ISA and that 8%, we'd only reach, if we started on the day that they were born, £351,252. Now, that's not absolutely bad at all, is it? It doesn't sound bad. It's enough for an incredible home paid outright in most parts of the UK and some, but we want that £1,000,000. And this is where, what happens if you teach your kids how to invest? That seeds for trees method that we spoke about earlier. If your child didn't touch that money and carried on adding £200 a month to the now adult stocks and shares ISA that they'd have by their 18th birthday, they'd be a millionaire when they hit 31. And they wouldn't pay a penny in tax when they withdraw it either, because it was inside our ISA. So it's totally possible to make your kids into millionaires. But as you can see, it does take time. You've got to be patient, and you will get the results. But also remember that the big bad wolf of inflation is still here. It hasn't gone anywhere either. Inflation is now back. Okay, so let's factor this in, because it always comes up. So yes, by the time you start today to the 31st birthday of being that millionaire and that £1,000,000, it's going to be worth less. Okay, it's just really that simple. There's nothing we can do about that, but we can counter it, and there are ways that you can get past it. Historically, inflation balances around about 2.5%. So each year, what I'm going to be doing with my own investments, and what I do every year, and what I'll do for my kids as well, is I'll bump my contribution up in line with the average inflation of that year. So that essentially removes the issue. Should my investments increase, as they should, I'm going to want to see that increase, but I've also increased my contributions to match inflation. So look, there's a lot to digest here. I get it. But one very important takeaway is that you're going to need to learn about index funds and how they work so you can implement for your kids and for your own investments too. So coming up now is my index funds for beginners video. I'm going to see you over there. Let's continue this so you can get leveled up in no time, and much love. I'll see you on that video. Let's go.